How do we balance growing our family with competing financial goals? Keep listening.
4 years ago this week, our youngest daughter was born. Aw, little Ellie.
She's a cute.
And she has been such a force of joy and nature in our lives. It almost feels like we've never not had her be part of the clan.
Mm-hmm.
Just the other day, I was quizzing our oldest on, what do you remember this or do you remember that? And she officially does not remember life before Ellie. She was only,
almost 4.
Almost 4. She was only 3 at the time. So obviously her memory was not going to be stored very readily at that time. But she has always remembered having Ellie. And I kind of loved that. The 3 Musketeers our girls have been. 3 girls in 4 years. A whirlwind, such a gift and a blessing to our family. And we hoped that, when she was born, the hope there was that she wouldn't be our last.
Mm-hmm.
But we also knew that we had a brand new business.
Yes.
When 4 years ago, when our youngest was born, WalletWin was less than a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like we had 4 kids.
Sure. Had a lot.
Remember that?
There was definitely at least 4 kids worth of attention being asked of us.
While just learning how to run a business. And we didn't have, we didn't put them in daycare. We were just tag teaming. We aged so much
There's a lot of gray on this
the
head.
last 5 years. It's just incredible, but it's been a wild ride, a blessed ride. But while we hoped she would not be our youngest forever, we also have not been blessed with any opportunities to grow our family since.
Correct.
Yes. And after our first was born, if anybody knows our story, she came to our family through adoption, and then through literally just as miraculous as God parting the Red Sea. I would say how our family kind of grew in those first, from our oldest through Ellie. It was like God took us on a ride each time.
Oh, yes.
And the typical story of adoption tends to be, this big process, this long wait, this, long drawn out journey. But we had the opposite. We were never ready. We were never looking for it. It was, it kind of sought us out. So we kind of thought, okay, maybe the Lord will just do that again. And we don't have to kind of go through all the process or what. And we also had this business that just needed to grow up. And then we had 3 people that kind of just needed to grow up a little bit. So over the last 4 years, we didn't have ants in our pants to grow our family. We were just open to however God wished to grow our family, knowing and trusting that he would, but not really going guns blazing in any direction. Would you say that sums up?
Yeah, it was never the top thing. Okay, well, what are we going to do now? What's the plan here?
Yes.
Yes.
As it had been militantly early.
Oh, yeah, we definitely wanted to figure that out.
Going through all of the rigmarole and the hoops and the surgeries and the things early in the journey. Okay, so girls have grown up. Business has grown up. Okay, we've got some breathing room. And I started to see the breathing room a couple of years ago. Okay, it's Christmas and I actually have a little bit of energy to hang a stocking. Okay, this is a sign of life, okay? That our family's transitioning into something new and not just constantly putting out fires and somebody's literally crying all the time. Okay, that season is now closing. So, okay, great, we're growing up. But I went on a retreat. What was that? February of 2020. You remember this? I went on a retreat at Broomtree up in South Dakota. And on this retreat, without getting into all the details, because we don't need to crack open Amanda's journal and lay bare, or however you say that, my soul.
Mm-hmm.
Through a couple of different saints that were accompanying me that weekend and in prayer, as certain as one can be, there was a deep desire placed and a deep calling to grow our family again. And kind of like a promise given to me. I didn't do this myself. I didn't cook it up myself. It was kind of given to me. This deep confidence that our family would grow and that I didn't have to fight for it. The Lord would fight for me under the intercession of, these key saints who were accompanying me. And then I just needed to kind of trust, like Abraham. When God took him and said, look, all the stars in the sky, these will be your descendants. Scholars of scripture, have enlightened us that it was day. It was daytime. Mm-hmm. So when he looked up at the sky, there was a whole lot of nothing. There weren't stars. Yet he chose to believe and in faith stepped forward. And I felt like it was one of those moments of, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what, why, where, who, what, nothing. This is not something I have control over, but okay. The Lord just promised me that our family would grow. I just have to keep my eyes open. Mm-hmm. So we kind of began to keep our eyes open, at least passively, looking around, what might there be, but there wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't like the times before where, out of thin air, somebody has asked us, to consider adopting, mm-hmm. that. And so it seemed like the Lord was not going to go that path. And about a year ago now, we decided to move forward on getting our home study redone.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the very first steps of the adoption process.
Yes. So we did our WalletWin Live just a little over a year ago. And the funds from that were to help us kick off that home study process. So it was a gift and a blessing to be able to do that. But adoption in general slowed down significantly since the pandemic for a whole variety of reasons we don't have to get into right now. Some good reasons, some bad reasons. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of, that whole thing has been slow coming. And then we were seeking out also approval to get a certain therapy for my adhesions because we are primarily infertile because I had surgery on my ovaries before Jonathan and I even met, let alone dated and got married. And this surgery coated my ovaries in scar tissue and left me likely permanently infertile. No, there wasn't the doctor's intention. Certainly. And a very small minority of people respond that way to surgery. I was one of them.
You're one in a million.
I got the lucky draw. I don't even say that sarcastically. I say that, the Lord had that for me. So it was good. And so we were looking at this treatment and trying to get approval to get my ovarian adhesions kind of manhandled out, for lack of a better terms. But it's a pretty expensive therapy, much less than surgery.
Yes.
But still an expensive therapy. It involved traveling. We just kept running into issue after issue after issue with the health sharing ministry that we use. And it just almost looked like that was a dead end as well. So it just seemed like we had kind of two dead ends sitting in front of us. And that began to breed a little bit of a discouragement, at least in me. And then all of a sudden, about a month ago, we got approval that the therapy can be pursued. So we've got it on the books. Ovaries are going to get manhandled. Now, I don't know if that's going to restore any healthy ovarian tissue that will allow ovulation. I don't know that. It's very unlikely that it won't. But at least I will know I've done everything, literally everything within my power. And that if God wishes to bless us with biological children, that's all on him. We've done it all. And, the hormones and all the things getting evaluated, we're going to commit to that process. But then it leaves us to adoption. And, continuing to get that home study renewed and getting into the pool and staring down, the last time we were told, adoption costs have risen. When we began our journey 8 years ago, we were told 25 to 30,000 was about average, and I would say that has held up. We had one that was, I think, 35 or something. It's about on average. It's landed us around there. But she said now it's more like 50 to 70.
Oof.
And so this has been something that we've just kind of had between that price tag and then the price tag for this other therapy and the travel involved. This has been something that we give the context here. But basically here we are. Our hearts are longing to grow our family again. I'd say our family is at a point where people are growing up. Yeah. Our business is stable. And now we've got 3 girls, ages 4, 5, and 7, waiting. They almost want to be little moms to a baby.
They might actually be able to help.
I think it would be radically different inviting another child in than it ever had been in the past. Because, we've got at least somebody's over the age of reason now. And so we're ready. We've been ready, but we're just ready. But we don't have control over this. And that's hard. So there's that element. But then there's also no matter what path the Texeras choose, it's expensive. It's just the reality. And so how do you, and maybe for some of you, growing your family is not as inexpensive of a hurdle, but there are always expenses that come. Maternity leave, the labor and delivery, increased childcare or a nanny, or there's limitless expenses that come, okay? So even though you might not be considering adoption or fertility therapy, your expenses are going to be different, but they're going to be there because it's just the reality. And so how do we balance growing our families when we have competing financial goals? That's the conversation that I'd like to have here, because John and I have had to have some really hard conversations. We represent kind of the extreme end. The extreme end of this could be $70,000. Where is that again?
And it's a very
tight
intentional choice.
Yes, extremely intentional.
Other folks might be in a situation where, being open to life, growing the family, just all right. Maybe we just there's just less to it.
Right.
You don't have to schedule surgeries or therapies. You don't have to do adoption paperwork and all this stuff. For us in our situation, it's a very intentional choice to discern, and it's a very active choice.
Yes.
And so that's a unique bit, or maybe more unique than other folks. We're not the only folks like this, but there's a little bit more to it.
Yes.
For us, certainly. But no matter where you are with it, you need to make the choice. You need to, figure out what's going on with you, and then, this is what we're focusing on. This is our priority right now.
Yes. And I would say for some, in one way, we have to do this on the front end. Or else we can't enter the journey. And for most families, it might be on the back end, that 9 months after the positive test. Holy moly, how are we figuring out the finances here? And so in some way, it's just 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. On which end of the conversation are you having this conversation? But you typically, when you're open to life, you're going to have this conversation multiple times in your family's journey. There's always going to be competing financial goals that seem like they could conflict with growing your family. And so some of those can be legitimate, and some of them are just designed to keep us stuck in fear. and to paralyze us and prevent us from that heroic yes. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We want to dive into that financial component, even when it doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
You're not going to hear us say that you always have to have all your ducks in a row. Because, hello, we got to leave room for the Holy Spirit. And he's always a wild card. He's always a wild card. We can count on that. And we'll talk about how to know when you can kind of prudentially leap, trusting that that will activate the Spirit, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, okay, let's dive into that, John.
Padre Pio's feast day is this week, and to celebrate it and my role as Fra Anastasio, a fellow Capuchin, in this month's 2-part episode of Saints Alive, we are holding a special sale on WalletWin Kids. This week only, when you use code PIO during checkout, you'll save $10, and we will donate another $10 to Saints Alive. Head on over to walletwin.com/kids now and use code PIO to claim your $10 savings and donate $10 to Saints Alive. That's walletwin.com/kids, promo code PIO.
What's one thing to consider as you're beginning this conversation of, okay, growing our family and weighing it against other legitimate financial goals we have? What's kind of that first baseline of information you should collect?
Well, if we're looking at the financial side of things, you do need to be able to kind of take a snapshot of your finances.
Yeah.
You need to know what's going on. What do you have in savings? What are your monthly bills? What do you make? Do you have debts or, outstanding things? And so you need to understand where you are so that you can know where you want to go. So one helpful tool for that is our WalletWin financial phases and money milestones.
Specifically what? 4 phases and
12 money milestones.
Yes. We call it the WalletWin method. And essentially you can look at this and see where you are on your financial journey. And that right there is going to help you figure out how flexible you might be able to be. Or if maybe it is more prudent to motor through this one goal for 3 or 4 months and then pivot and turn ourselves towards growing the family. Certainly not, let's stay paying off debt for 5 years and get around to it. But if it's only just a small portion of time, it might be prudent. But it's just knowing, most people I'd say don't have that information. So you're kind of making a decision blind.
Once you know where you're at, right? You know what the situation is. You know actually how to weigh what you're weighing, what the decisions are that you have to make. And as you do that, you need to understand, you need to assess, you probably need to reassess what your priorities are right now. You need to know what it is that we are going after right now. One helpful tool that we've used for this, all sorts of situations, but even this one, is this tool called the rallying cry. Yes. So in the grand scheme of our family, we've got, the things that, of course, we always need to be doing for our family to function well, but we have a particular thing that is our main objective for the next few months. And that is where that understanding what that is and naming it helps us answer questions about where we want to spend our time, where we want to spend our effort, where we want to spend our money, certainly, because we've identified that thing as the most important thing. So, right, if it when it was, finishing the basement, we were putting money towards the basement. We were putting plenty of time towards the basement.
Yes.
And so, should we go on this vacation this weekend? Well, no, I don't think the basement's going to be done by then. And that's our priority. So we're going to spend time working on the basement. So now we're seeing, our rallying cry here is expanding the family.
Right.
So we're making decisions with our time and with our money to support that goal we're going after.
Right. And to not be I'd say many times. So remember, I went on that retreat in February of 2020, and
a little while ago.
The seed was planted of Grow the Family. But whenever we sat down to discern our rallying cries over the last couple of years that we've been doing this, other rallying cries came to the top. The first one was places and spaces, and we got the basement finished, and we bought an RV and renovated it. And then we had, what was another one? Oh my goodness. Why am I blanking? Anyway, we've had a variety of other ones. We had some one in particular that completely failed for a variety of reasons. We had a health one that was really successful.
That was actually very good.
Yeah, so it's just hard to remember them right now. But whenever it came time to address what the rallying cry was, in our own discernment, we just knew it wasn't time for this family growth to be the rallying cry. And even though I had that seed in my heart and I wanted everything to go all in on that, the timing wasn't there. And I had to let that go a little bit, but then trust that God will provide the time in his own way. And and you and I have to be in agreement about it. Okay, so it was, I'd say, just over the summer is when we decided, okay, now we want this to be the rallying cry. Now this is something that it was in pause, but then when we kind of got all these green lights around pursuing treatment, etc., it now became the next rallying cry. We're working on a particular one right now that's set to expire October 1, and then October 1, Texera Family Growth is the new rallying cry, which is exciting. But it can be a little intimidating. And like Jonathan said, once it becomes your rallying cry, it's time to make your budget, your money, reflect that reality. Okay, so we could say, adoption, it's the rallying cry right now, but then do literally nothing to set aside money for that. Well, that's mismatched. That doesn't make sense. We're of course not going to meet the rallying cry. And we're out of order here. And we're trying to go in two different directions. They have to be aligned. That's the only way you can kind of make progress on something. And I just want to encourage you guys that for most of us, not everybody, but for most, sacrifices will be involved at some level. And that is not a sign of something being wrong. I oftentimes, maybe it's because we're in the entrepreneurship space, I don't know, but I see all these videos that are basically like, if you feel stressed about money or feel like you're making hard decisions about it, you're just in a lack mindset, a scarcity mindset, and you're not in a space of abundance, saying that money flows to me easily and believing that you can just constantly out-earn the needs that are coming your way. And I think that that's a load of garbage.
Yeah, what a crock.
It's hot garbage.
Hot, juicy garbage.
I think you can have a killer, awesome, healthy money mindset, a true abundance mindset, oriented towards God, knowing He's the one who gives us everything. He's giving us even the money that is being given to us. And as long as we're handling it prudently, sometimes He's going to allow us to have a lack for a specific reason, either for our good or for the growth of a certain virtue. I think that we see that in the lives of the saints, in our own lives, and it's not because we just have a scarcity, crappy money mindset.
There's so many other parts of our life where having everything we could ever want proves itself to not be such a great idea, right? When you go to the restaurant, you have to pick which of those menu items you want. You can't get one of everything.
You could, but
you're not going to eat it all.
Wasteful.
Yeah, and when you go to the all-you-can-eat buffet, you leave feeling
Horrible.
miserable.
Oh yeah, horrible.
So it's totally natural. It's probably good for us to have to make decisions, right? If everything is a priority, nothing's a priority.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is the essence, right? That if it is a priority, if it is important to you, well, maybe
Other
it's a little
things,
difficult at first, but you can say no to the things you like so you can say yes to the things you love.
Exactly.
The thing that is the priority right now. And that is why it's so important to understand what is your rallying cry? What is that top priority right now? Because when you go through and you ask yourself questions about spending or your time or whatever it is, you always know kind of your point of reference. How does this relate to me working towards that goal?
And that's going to make the sacrifices more fruitful because it's going to lead to greater gains in the things that you really want.
More intentional.
I mean, in scripture, it's, I believe it's Jesus telling a parable. He says it best. He says, unless a grain of wheat falls and dies, it remains just a grain. But if it dies, it bears great fruit. So anytime we're making a sacrifice, even if it's a financial one in our own budgets, and we're saying no to something so we can say yes to the place we know God's calling us, we can trust that grace is going to come from that decision. And again, for most of us, that's going to be the reality. Our family finances are going to be made up of a series of trade-offs, shifts, and juggling priorities. Some, it won't be as hard. But you know what? Even if you had unlimited amounts of money or more money than you knew what to do with or could spend, you know what? That's not to be glorified. There are other challenges and expectations that come with a high income like that. So don't fall into a temptation that your life is automatically harder or worse because you don't have access to unlimited amounts of money. Would it be tempting to think, oh, if we just made $100,000 a month, we could adopt at any time? I guess that's tempting. Maybe. But I know that would mean X, Y, and Z challenge would be part of my life. And it's just, to whom much is given, much is expected. There's responsibility and weight that represents. So it's okay to have dreams and desires that might exceed your bank account. That's okay. God is in that, and he's working through that. And again, grass isn't always, the temptation is that grass is always greener. It's not. It's always what is that phrase? The grass is greenest where you water it.
Oh, yeah.
And staying in the present and loving the circumstances that God has you in at this moment. That is his will for you, the present moment. And we are to align ourselves with that and to prefer what his circumstances are for us and his providence than whatever cooked up, imagined better reality we want for our life. So, and all that's assuming that we're trying to grow ourselves, blah, 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 blah. We aren't just bumps on logs. We're genuinely trying to show up with goodwill and challenge ourselves to grow in virtue daily. Okay, so sacrifices will be involved, but, and this is the last thing I want to leave everybody with, and I want to even read it for you and I, John, to remind us of something. There's always the trust in divine providence that will sometimes ask you to leap. We have been asked to leap at different times in our journey towards growing our family. Every one of them felt painful, hard, and challenging. Maybe some of you temperamented. Maybe if we've just got a bunch of... Jonathan is a sanguine phlegmatic. I don't know if it ever was painful for you.
Went with it, I guess.
I'm a melancholic. It hurt really bad. I don't like stepping out into the unknown. I don't like making myself vulnerable and just hoping that God will show up. I don't physically, my body doesn't like that process. But I do it. And every time we've ever leapt, he shows up. And he might ask us to leap again. And I've just learned now to factor him in, to factor him into the equation. And so when we have those moments, John, when I'm sitting there freaking about the money or stressing of like, what could we possibly do? What if an adoption situation comes to us and We're only halfway there financially. What are we going to do? I go to this. This is where we have to trust in divine providence, knowing that we can only prepare or do so much. He has to fill in the rest. He always has, and he will continue to. But I want to read a passage from Searching for and Maintaining Peace, a book I swear to you I've read 20 times. Every time I reread it, though, it's as if it's brand new, and I've never heard it before. And this summer, I read it audiobook style on Hollow with a group of friends, and we would talk about it every Monday night, and it's just incredibly fruitful, some of the discussions that came out of that. But he talks about finances in it, and I'm going to read this passage, okay? Our difficulty in believing in providence, the first obstacle is that as long as we have not experienced concretely the fidelity of divine providence to provide for our essential needs, we have difficulty believing in it and we abandon it. We have hard heads. The words of Jesus do not suffice for us. We want to see at least a little in order to believe. Well, we do not see it operating around us in a clear manner. How then are we to experience it? It is important to know one thing. We cannot experience this support from God unless we leave Him the necessary space in which He can express Himself. I would like to make a comparison. As long as a person who must jump with a parachute does not jump out into the void, he cannot feel that the cords of the parachute will support him, because the parachute has not yet had a chance to open. One must first jump, and it is only later that the one feels carried. And so it is in spiritual life. God gives in the measure that we expect of Him, says St. John of the Cross. And St. Francis de Sales says, the measure of divine providence acting on us is the degree of confidence that we have in it. This is where the problem lies. Many do not believe in providence because they've never experienced it. But they've never experienced it because they've never jumped into the void and taken the leap of faith. They never give it the possibility to intervene. They calculate everything, anticipate everything. They seek to resolve everything by counting on themselves instead of counting on God. The founders of religious orders proceed with the audacity of this spirit of faith. They buy houses without having a penny. They receive the poor, although they have nothing with which to feed them. Then God performs miracles for them. The check arrives and the granaries are filled. But too often, generations later, everything is planned, calculated. One does not incur an expense without being sure in advance to have enough to cover it. How can providence manifest itself? And the same is true in the spiritual life. If a priest drafts all his sermons and his talks down to the least comma, in order to be sure that he does not find himself wanting before his audience, and never has the audacity to begin preaching with a prayer and confidence in God as his only preparation, how can he have this beautiful experience of the Holy Spirit, who speaks through his mouth? Does the gospel not say, do not worry about how to speak or what you should say, for you are to be given to you when the time comes, because it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father will be speaking in you. Let us be very clear. Obviously, we do not want to say that it is a bad thing to be able to anticipate things, to develop a budget, or prepare one's homilies. Our natural abilities are also instruments in the hands of providence. But everything depends on the spirit in which we do things. We must clearly understand that there is an enormous difference in an attitude of heart between one who in fear of finding himself wanting because he does not believe in the intervention of God on behalf of those who lean on him, programs everything in advance to the smallest detail, and does not undertake anything except in the exact measure of its actual possibilities, and one who certainly undertakes legitimate things, but who abandons himself with confidence in God to provide all that is asked of him, and who thus surpasses his own possibilities. And that which God demands of us always goes beyond our natural human possibilities. Boom.
Well, there you go.
Boom, boom, boom. Any thoughts from that, John, that you wanted to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it's like, okay, so I just need to just go crazy and do whatever. But then as he tempers it, you need, do some planning. It's not a bad thing to do some planning, but you have to trust.
It's that grace in nature.
You need to plan and all these things, right? You make it. We're making growing the family a priority and getting some things ready so that something can happen, right? You can't jump out of the airplane and feel the parachute support you unless you put on the parachute and get in the plane.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's
so getting in the plane with the parachute is kind of what we've done to this point.
That's what we're trying to do. Yep.
And what we're encouraging other families to do too.
Mm-hmm.
You might not know how you're going to afford another kid or how they're going to work in the schedule or X, Y, and Z. But if you're feeling the pull, you get the parachute on your back and you get in the dang plane. And you trust that God is going to make a way.
Yep. I mean, I love this right at the end, right? And that God is going to God demands of us always goes beyond our natural human possibilities. It's total bunk to say God never gives us anything that we can't handle. It's almost exclusively what he gives us because it's with his grace that it is handled.
And
that's where we grow. That's where we become holy. And that's where we do his will and do good things. When we can't handle it, when we don't see the way forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes in prayer, I'll cook up this holy version of Amanda. The melancholic again, dwelling and imagining. I'm sure she's just she's so far off from where God could actually take me. She's crap compared to where God could actually take me. But I can't even imagine where he might want to take me.
Yeah.
And so all of us need to kind of factor him in. Do the best we can, and then leave room. Leave room. Mm-hmm. So that's us on the first side of this journey. We're in the plane. We've got the backpack strapped on.
You might have a backpack. I've got a parachute.
Okay. Okay, we're still figuring it out. Yeah, the plan is getting worked out.
We're figuring this out.
But we're at least in the plane.
Our knees might still be knocking a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I feel sick. I'm going to throw up here soon. Knowing that at some point God put the desire in our hearts. And so he's either going to shove us out the plane. I don't know how we're getting out. Mm-hmm. But at some point he's going to activate. And the desires he's put into our hearts that he alone can fulfill, he will. I don't know how to look. I don't know how it'll play out. But I'm standing at the edge, and I told him, and you've told him, go ahead and just shove us off the ledge whenever you want.
Kick me out of the plane, God.
Yeah. Yep, that's pretty much where we're at. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we'll be able to come back and do a post episode later.
That'd be great.
On how this all worked out and how the prep aided in the jump. Because they go together. Mm-hmm. And then how he showed up. Because y'all, if he's going to have to show up big time. Either way, if we're going to grow our family biologically or through adoption, there's a story coming your way. Because both involve both require miraculous somethings.
Yes.
So I can't wait to tell you the story.
So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you get that episode whenever it may come out. If you leave a review, that helps other people find it. And of course, tell somebody about it. That's like the best way for more people to hear about this podcast. Say, hey, you need to be listening to the Catholic Money Show. Go search that on whatever thing you listen to podcasts on. And make sure you subscribe because they're really good.
And we're also on social media. So tag us on Instagram. We're at WalletWin. We're also over on TikTok at WalletWin. And went viral over there last year. That was kind of fun. We like jacking around over there. But come hang out with us on wherever you're on social media at WalletWin. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for joining us today. You can learn more about this show and the WalletWin program at WalletWin.com.
Music in this episode's from Dylan Gardner. Listen to his new album, Almost Real, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your music. See you next week.